one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 11th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's minus 4 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Russia is widening its military offensive in Ukraine, a likely message that no area in that country is safe. Moscow targeting areas near airports in the west for the first time. It appears that convoy that had been stalled outside the capital of Kyiv is maneuvering now in an attempt to encircle the city. The UN Security Council will meet today at Russia's request, discussing what Moscow claims are, quote, the military biological activities of the U.S. on the territory of Ukraine. Our Prime Minister has announced some more sanctions against Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich, a major shareholder in Evraz. That is a British multinational manufacturing company that does operate a steel mill in Regina and other businesses in Alberta. British government has said Abramovich is using Evraz to help destabilize Ukraine during the Russian invasion. Evraz also has facilities in Alberta, including in Calgary, but the Prime Minister says Canadian Evraz employees are not going to be affected.
I believe Abramovich owns shares that are worth a little less than 30% of Evraz. We are obviously going to watch carefully, but we are confident that this will not impact the hardworking Canadians who are doing good work in companies across the country, including that one.
Now, Abramovich also owns the Chelsea Football Club, and that team has severe sanctions on it. No ticket sales, no merchandise sales, and no player contracts are to be signed. 3 other Russian oligarchs, none of whom have been sanctioned by Canada, also own shares, by the way, in Evraz. The International Organization for Migration says 2.5 million people have fled Ukraine since Russia invaded more than 2 weeks ago. The United Nations estimates another 2 million are displaced inside Ukraine. We get more from Ian Pennell in a small town just outside Kyiv.
What we're seeing here is a constant stream of people who are fleeing the fighting. We've been talking to some elderly people who have been sheltering their basement for days. Today is a day that they're managing to get out. This is the picture now being repeated across the country. Something like 80,000 people have fled just from this region and Sumy over the last couple of days as this war closes in on everywhere now.
Now, Russia is widening, as we told you, its military offensive today. City News Time 9:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A winter weather travel advisory now in effect for Ottawa and area. We'll have some flurries at times through the day, but it's after 4 o'clock. That's when we get into the steadier snow, about 5 centimeters and another 5 centimeters overnight. Should all come to an end, though, early Saturday. 0 for the high, -4 for the low, -3 Saturday, and some more flurries on Sunday, but colder air. The high about -4. For today, the high 0.
All right, now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's -4 degrees. StatsCan says the economy added 337,000 jobs in February. Economists had said it would likely add about 120. So that more than offset the loss of 200,000 jobs back in January. The unemployment rate in Canada has now dropped to 5.5%. That is the lowest it has been since February of 2020, when it was 5.7. StatsCan says the proportion of working age population with a job rose in February to 61.8%. It marks the first time that rate returned to a pre-pandemic level. If you're taking off for March break and connecting through Toronto's Pearson, be prepared for a crowd. The most people expected to pass through Canada's busiest airport in a single day today for the past couple of years. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Friday. We made it. Made it to the second anniversary of the declaration of the pandemic. 2 years. I thought it would last 2 weeks. But the show must go on. And on today's show, the Rob Snow Show here on City News, he's been minding Ottawa's business all week long. Tom Korski will be back, the managing editor of Blacklock's reporter, keeping an eye on Parliament Hill and how politicians spend our money. And oh my goodness, what a scoop they have today. What a scoop. Yeah, this is the kind of story that drives people like me, hard-working middle-class people like me, crazy, bonkers. Now, I have to kind of set this up, okay? You may remember way back when the Liberals were constantly going after the Harper Conservatives. They had a couple of very effective lines of attack. Stephen Harper, that big meanie, muzzled scientists. Right? That was one. Remember? Stephen Harper muzzled the scientists. Repeated it over and over and over again because this Stephen Harper is a big, scary control freak who muzzles scientists. And the reason that he muzzled scientists is because Stephen Harper doesn't believe in science. He doesn't believe in science. Science! And we're liberals and we believe in science. So one of the things that the Liberals did to fix all of the damage done to science because of the dark, dreary Harper years was to appoint a chief science advisor, right? Because nothing says we love science more than appointing a chief science advisor and paying that person. Are you ready for this? The pay for the chief science advisor of Canada is $327,000 a year. That is good work if you can get it. $327,000 a year. Dr. Mona Niemer is Canada's chief science advisor, and she doesn't have to be muzzled to do, yeah. What is it that she actually does for all of that money? Your money. Hard to know, really, because her office has not published an annual report in 2 years, despite being required to do so. $327,000. You can't write a report once a year? Now, the reports may have stopped, but the pay raises didn't. $16,000 pay raise. Hey, David, did you get a $16,000 pay raise during the pandemic? No, you say.
No, I did not.
Now that's a 5% pay raise for someone in her salary range. Our nurses, they get 1% pay. She's the chief science advisor. Science! And you're not going to believe it. Well, yeah, you probably will. She has jetted, in the name of climate change, jetted all over the world and has billed, are you ready for this? $221,000 in travel expenses. And somewhere Bev Oda just coughed up her orange juice. $220,000 in travel expenses to such destinations as Berlin and Brussels and Dresden and Geneva and London and Lyon and Madrid and Mexico City, Paris, San Francisco, Stockholm, Tokyo, Toulouse, and Yokohama. Oh, and let's not forget Scotland for the big climate change conference, where she billed the government, this do-nothing government appointee, billed the government $17,728 for her Scottish sojourn, including $12,445 for airfare, because, oh yes, only first class will do. First class all the way by the sounds of things. Man, oh man, this has to be the sweetest gig ever. Travel the world, get paid 6 times what the average worker earns in a year, and you don't even have to produce a report once a year outlining what the heck it is you do for a living. Daddy, what should I be when I grow up? The Chief Science Advisor, son. The Chief Science Advisor. What a... Oh, my God. Man, oh, man. That puts Dingwall to shame, that stuff. Coming up after the 9:30 news, he is like the busiest man in Ottawa media these days. Derick Fage. He's here already, right? The host of Daytime Ottawa on Rogers Television. He's filling in this week and next week for the wonderful Sam LaPrade here on City News. Sam is enjoying some well-deserved time off. She's off to British Columbia, where you don't even have to wear a mask as of this morning in the province of British Columbia. But Derick always has a hot take on the news of the day. Also on the show this morning, Dr. Vera Etches, Ottawa's Chief Medical Officer of Health on 2 years. 2 long years of pandemic life. I spoke with her this morning. We didn't go through all the ups and downs of the last 2 years, more downs than ups, if you ask me. But instead, we kind of focused on where we are right now, where she thinks we're going. You know, the mask mandate ends in a little more than a week's time. The days are getting longer. Weather's getting a little warmer. And once again, there's some optimism that we might be coming out the other side of this. But challenges remain. And certainly, there are lessons to be learned across the whole healthcare system. And we talked a lot about that this morning, that the lessons that have to be learned the hard way, I guess, about hospital capacity, access to a family doctor, the woeful state of long-term care, the surgery backlog, access to mental health services, addiction treatment programs, and all the other things that have been on full display, the shortcomings revealed. After 2 years of pandemic life, Dr. Etches shares her thoughts. Steve Warne on sports. There's a lot happening in the sports world these days. The Sens have put together a couple of wins. The NHL trade deadline's coming up. The baseball lockout's over. Billionaires and millionaires rejoice. The baseball lockout's over. And golf is back. Hey, that's fun, David, isn't it? Golf is back.
Love the players.
Yeah, it's the Players' Championship. That's one of the big ones. It's not a major, but the winner makes so much money. I looked it up. First place is $3.6 million U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so
Big tournament.
And the golf course is pretty nice, too.
Pretty nice.
TPC Sawgrass is like one of those video game golf courses, right?
It's beautiful.
According to golf.com, TPC Sawgrass is the most expensive green fee in the United States. $840 U.S. $840. So more than $1,000 Canadian. For a round of golf, a little out of my price range. Just a wee bit out of my price range.
$1,068.22.
Right. You get a caddy, though. It comes with a caddy.
You have to tip them, though.
Right. If you can afford a $1,000 round of golf, you can afford to tip the caddy, I think. We'll do the Queen's Park Weekend Review with the MPPs. We'll talk about the end of the mask mandate after the March break, March 21st, the possibility that all pandemic-related health restrictions can be lifted by the end of April. Some school boards, like the big school board in Hamilton, they say they're going to have their own mask mandate there, despite what the province says. So we get into all of that. The price of gas as well. Price of gas. It did go down overnight. $1.73, $1.74, $1.75. That's what qualifies now as cheap gas. Hey, $1.75 a liter. What a screaming deal. And we'll do the talk back hour between 10 and 11 o'clock. An hour of phone calls, an hour of opinions. It is the hottest hour of talk radio in town. Just ask around, and it's the Friday free for all today. And that means just about anything goes, okay? We don't come up with the topics. You come up with the topics. We do our best to roll with it. We usually talk about things that have been in the news, but that's not any kind of command from on high. Could be something you think is in the news or think should be in the news. You want to talk about Putin, we can do that. You want to talk about Trudeau or Poilievre or Charest or Ford or any other politician, we can do that as well. The price of a loaf of bread or a tank of gas. The rent's too darn high. Let's do it. Potholes? Oh, we've got plenty of those. Gosh, the roads are in such bad shape. Even downtown lefties are complaining about the roads. You'd think some of them are running for mayor. Whatever it is, we're good to go because it's Friday on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are seasoned, we have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on a time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And people, and for us, we have to be careful, you know, especially with the virus going on. Did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, you know, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You know, you can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was thought it's gonna be like this. You know, earthquake might happen, we joke about it before, things might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive, that's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in the mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors, or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy, because we have to shut down completely, you know. And this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can go online. Let's say T-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit, but when it comes to clothing. Like it's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, I mean, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really wanna shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You wanna be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, you know? You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, you know, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at a certain time, so I'm glad to do that.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Tom Korski's been minding Ottawa's business all week long as the managing editor of Blacklock's reporter. Welcome back.
Thank you, Rob.
I'll tell you what. You're the reason I'm on blood pressure medication. I swear. Oh, some of your stories, man. Holy cow. This is a heck of a story. Who is, let's walk through this. Who is the chief science advisor?
Oh, funny you should mention. She's a chemist by the name of Dr. Mona Niemer.
Dr. Mona
and she makes almost $250,000 a year.
Yeah, $327,000 a year. Chief science advisor. What is the chief science advisor's job?
Well, your job is to keep a sharp eye on the state of government science and then report that back to the taxpayers who give you the $350,000 a year.
Okay. So produce an annual report. This is the science happening within the government of Canada. Okay.
Absolutely crucial.
Crucial. Absolutely vital. Especially in the post-Harper years, because
well, he was a monster.
He muzzled the scientists. Right? He muzzled them. So, when was the last time that there's been a report from the chief science advisor, given how critical this posting is?
Well, there hasn't been a yearly report in 2 years. Because there was, they say, an outbreak of science called the pandemic.
Right.
The thing is, the odd part is that struck us is, so Chief Science Advisor Dr. Mona has not had time to publish an annual report to tell taxpayers what she's been up to, but she did have time, interestingly, to run up significant travel bills, including a costly trip to Glasgow and Paris last November to talk about climate change. I mean, you have to fly first class to do that. You can't do that on the phone. And she is concerned about climate change. She says so.
Well, for that price, I should hope so. Just the airfare. First class air travel, I'm assuming Ottawa to Glasgow.
And then Glasgow to Paris, yeah.
And Glasgow to Paris, okay.
And then back to Lumbertown, yeah. It was expensive.
$12,000, $12,415.
Climate, though.
Right.
Rob, I don't like where you're going with this.
And
because
17, and the whole bill was for her to attend the United Nations climate meetings in Scotland and France. $17,728. In France, I'm wondering, didn't Bev Oda stay in France? Was it in France where she got in trouble for buying orange juice?
I think, or was that
or maybe it was London?
Hotel in London.
I'm not sure if it was London or Paris.
The thing is, Bev was not science. This is science.
This is science.
Crucial distinction.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
And maybe you can run down some of the other destinations that she has visited to the tune of $221,000 in travel expenses.
Absolutely. It's stupefying. There's Madrid, Mexico City, Tokyo, Yokohama. Who goes there? Mona did twice. Numerous cities in continental Europe, Washington. She went to San Francisco, so that was nice. Seattle.
Right.
She's been around. Mona's been everywhere. That Hank Snow song.
Oh boy, I would. Yeah. Well, it's a Hank Snow song. It's a Stompin' Tom song. It's a sad song, really. I mean, anybody who knows anything about climate change and carbon footprints is when you travel by air, your carbon footprint goes up like just exponentially. If you use any carbon footprint calculator, it'll show you the same thing. It's just so audacious. It's audacious to me. And as you say, here we have gone through this extraordinary 2-year period where the government has really lavished money in the biopharma sector to try and advance things like therapeutics and to get vaccine production facilities open. Medicago, hundreds of millions of dollars went to Medicago to get its vaccine to the approval stage. And yet none of this appears in an annual report from a $327,000 government appointee who's supposed to, under mandate, do an annual report on what the government is spending money on in science. It's crazy. And this idea, well, we couldn't because of the pandemic. Lots of people never missed a day's work during the whole course of the pandemic. It's a pitiful excuse.
Yeah, but in fairness, Rob, you can't be in two places at once. You can't be hunched over your desk writing an annual report and be at the buffet at the first-class airport lounge at the same time. And in fairness to Dr. Mona, Chief Science Advisor, even she cannot suspend the laws of physics. I have to pick one or the other.
Okay.
And you know I'm going to Paris. I mean, I am not taking that off the table. It's science. I have to be honest, this is almost beyond my comprehension, as was high school physics class.
I should have been a chemist. All right. It's the 2-year anniversary of the pandemic today. March 11th, the World Health Organization declared a pandemic. Blacklock has been covering the government's response to the pandemic from day one. So at the government level, what comes to mind for you? Investigations, committee hearings, these kinds of things that are happening right now into how the federal government responded to the pandemic. What reviews are being done?
Well, at the current, none. But there has been a lot of ground plowed over the past 2 years, and it led to some bad places.
Okay.
The evidence showed, and this is not partisan jib-jabbing, this was documentation. The feds were not prepared. They did not know what they were doing. They were not forthcoming with people on their lack of preparedness, which was crucial information for everybody, every small business, every worker, every employer. Everyone needed as much information as possible. The feds let them down quite badly. Today, the feds talk about lessons learned. We're going to have lessons learned. Well, that's just an excuse to have more trips to Yokohama and meetings. The lesson learned was, and this is very far-reaching, it's my opinion, but you hear this reflected from legislators based on the documentation of the grotesque lack of preparedness and the costly mistakes. The takeaway, Rob, is that there are limits to what the federal government can do. I know this is not a shock to some people. And one of the limits is responding to something like this. And you would say, well, if the Department of Health can't save lives in a pandemic, then what's the point? That's a good question.
Okay.
No answer to that, but that's a good question.
All right. Here locally, the aftermath of the protests here in Ottawa, we continue to kind of parse this. What's happening at the, say, committee level, for example, into whoever this woman was who jumped onto the tomb of the unknown soldier? What's happening there?
Very famous case, and that was used to discredit Freedom Convoy protesters. They were blamed for that. Well, actually, nothing's happening. Isn't that interesting? After this was a cause celeb, I mean, this was famous.
Oh, sure.
This went around the world. Look at these hooligans. So obtuse and almost violent. They were jumping and dancing. Globe and Mail incorrectly reported they were urinating on the tomb of the unknown soldier. What kind of monsters and savages would do that? That woman who was famously videotaped was never identified, never arrested. Police pretended to look for her. The Commons Veterans Affairs Committee was outraged. To Liberal MPs on the committee said, we're getting to the bottom of this. They actually passed a motion to summon Ottawa police. We want answers, they said. Well, the police never showed up and the committee dropped it.
Okay.
No one's interested in the investigation. Isn't that interesting?
And that's that. Okay.
Yes,
all right.
That was that.
Okay. Just one more thing. What percent? We have a housing affordability crisis. Just about everyone agrees. I mean, $2 million for a house in Toronto, and you have 800 and some thousand here in Ottawa. It's crazy. CMHC is the government's housing agency. What percentage of the payroll there got bonuses?
Yeah, it was about 94%.
94%.
So we think that's everyone except there would have been, perhaps there was someone at the remand center, or Jerry, he's always eating glue in the corner. He didn't get a bonus. Pretty much everyone who could put their pants on in the morning got a bonus at CMHC through the recession and through the pandemic. At the same time as their CEO, Romy Bowers, really lamented the tragedy of poverty and homelessness. What can we do? She asked in committee, and then went back and approved the bonuses.
$25 million worth.
Yeah, it was about $11,600 a pop.
Wow. Holy cow.
If you showed up, it was bonus time at CMHC. It's like being a science advisor.
Almost. All right. Good stuff. Thank you, Tom. Speak next week.
Rob.
Bye-bye. Yep. Incredible reporting. I mean, that's why it's worth the subscription right there for stuff like that. Blacklock's reporter, managing editor, Tom Korski. Derick Fage, after the news here on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 11th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 4 degrees, and Smiths Falls, minus 3. Here's what's making news this hour. Ukraine's president has posted a cryptic video message saying it is possible to say his land will be free because it has reached a strategic turning point. President Zelensky did not elaborate. Russian President Vladimir Putin says there were positive developments in talks with Ukraine, but also did not offer any other details. New sanctions leveled by Canada against Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich. He is a major shareholder in a company that includes a steel mill in Regina. Abramovich also owns the Chelsea men's and women's soccer teams in England. The men played a game yesterday. They're now waiting word from the British government if they're allowed to continue, since Russian-owned companies are facing sanctions in Britain. 337,000 more jobs were filled last month in Canada. That has dropped our national unemployment rate to 5.5%. It's a full percentage point drop, and that was not felt in Ottawa. The rate actually went up, possibly due to the trucker convoy protest in the downtown. We are at 5% even. Gatineau, though, did fall to 4.6% in February. StatsCan says the national rate is the lowest unemployment rate it has been since just before the pandemic, so 2 years. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Derick Fage is the busiest man in the Ottawa media right now. I mean, he's filling in for Sam all this week, all next week. Sam is in Victoria, British Columbia. Beautiful place to be this time of year, Victoria, British Columbia. We should call her. Let's call her. What time is it there? See how she's doing. They don't have to wear a mask in British Columbia as of today. And Derick is still hosting Daytime Ottawa every day at Rogers Television. So he leaves here. He goes over to our television studio, does this thing there. Working on another show about Ukraine.
That's right.
Yeah. When is that going to be?
It's a busy, and I think we're going to air it here again.
Okay, good.
On City News, 6 o'clock tonight, and a great lineup actually. So it's a full hour. We have the charge d'affaires from the Ukrainian Embassy in Canada joining us again. We've got 3 people that are on the ground in Ukraine.
Wow.
So we have Christopher Curtis, journalist from the Rover. He's currently in Lviv. Olga Polotska, who
we spoke with her this week.
Yeah, she's in Kyiv. We'll be speaking with her as well. Just the content. It's amazing what we've put together in 72 hours. It's
incredible.
It's been busy.
Good for you.
But there's so much to talk about. So obviously talk about what's happening on the ground right now in all those areas that we have people joining us virtually.
Yeah. the story of refugees is incredible, too. I mean, the pace of the crisis.
Yeah,
There's 2 million people,
Christopher
more than
Curtis,
2
who
million.
is a former Montreal Gazette journalist, and he sort of started his own subscription-based news agency, the Rover. So he came through Poland. And when he landed in Poland and, of course, got closer and closer to the border, he said the refugee crisis was the enormity of it. He just couldn't believe his eyes. And he's in Lviv, so you're seeing a lot of Ukrainians are coming there. They're staying. He says, for the most part, it's business as usual in Lviv at the moment. He's riding the metro. People are going to restaurants. They're going to work, and there's tons of refugees in his hotel alone. It's just packed with refugees waiting to, of course, go on to Poland.
Wow,
it's an unbelievable situation.
Yeah. And just the ability of one country to absorb that number of people in such a short period of time, and Poland being fairly prosperous, but then you have hundreds of thousands of more people. Basically, the population of Moldova has doubled, right?
Yeah.
Moldova is a poor country. It's the poorest country in Europe. So, my gosh, it's a terrible, terrible thing that's happening.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Before we get into the pandemic, we'll have Dr. Etches on here in about 10 minutes' time. But I have to talk a little bit about the Conservative Party leadership and how things are going. Because Jean Charest announced last night in Calgary, right, shoring up his Western Canadian street cred, right, talking up the oil industry. And I'm really one of you guys, because Calgary is kind of the ideological heartland of Canadian conservatism, right?
Yeah,
so you have to be there and be authentic. But one of the big questions for me is I look at Poilievre. Whatever you think, you can't question the guy's work ethic.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm not a fan, but I agree.
His enthusiasm for him and his beliefs.
He likes himself.
And his beliefs.
Yeah.
And Shannon Proudfoot has a really long read on Poilievre, where he comes from, what he believes, and how what he believes now is every bit what he believed when he was 17 years old, growing up in Alberta, writing essays. This is what I would do if I ran the country, kind of thing. Freedom. Cite you Winston Churchill.
It's a love-hate.
Chapter and verse.
I mean, nobody's sort of sitting on the fence with Poilievre.
No. That's it.
You either love the guy or you hate the guy. I don't know if he's the right guy.
But nobody questions his enthusiasm, his work ethic. His social media savvy.
Yeah.
His ability to turn a phrase. And there's Jean Charest. I was mentioning earlier in the week, I was pointing out on Tuesday, I said, Jean Charest doesn't even have a Twitter account.
He's not even on. I remember.
Poilievre does a diatribe about freedom, 1 million views. Like 1 million views.
Yeah.
His social media accounts, hundreds of thousands of followers. I'm not saying social media is going to decide the leadership race or the general election.
No, but
you
got to
be there.
Place.
You have to be there.
Absolutely.
Right? And earlier in the week, Jean Charest wasn't even there.
I know.
So anyway,
I think he heard you. I think Jean Charest was listening.
He's got a Twitter account.
Yeah.
And David said it's 21 seconds long. David said it looks like a hostage video. It looks like he's been taken hostage. He's sitting at a desk. His coffee cup is red. First of all, it's not blue. It's red.
Interesting choice.
It's red.
Yeah.
There's no backdrop or anything.
Yeah, and I'm surprised.
It looks like I'm being a bunch of insiders signed me up. They want me to run for the leadership.
I've been told to say these words.
And anyway, there's no spirit. There's no enthusiasm. There's nothing there that says, "Oh, this is the guy that I want to lead the country." Let's listen. Let's listen to it. It's 21 seconds.
Yep.
Let's listen. This is how he's introducing him. This is the launch.
I haven't seen it yet. Okay.
This is the launch of his campaign.
To all my followers who are joining us now, welcome. And welcome to this leadership campaign for the Conservative Party of Canada and for the future of Canada. We hope that you will follow us, but even better, join our team and join a group of men and women who are built to win.
So, you know what? It sounds like a guy that just joined Twitter and has no idea how to use social media. And that's what I think
is it recording? Is it recording now? So it's recording
Guys,
now.
Give me the thumbs up if we're going.
Like,
but isn't it surprising in a way, Rob? Because here's a guy that is surrounded by a lot of smart people. I mean, he's got a lot of great support. You would think his advisors would have created this media team to work with him, to give him a great background, to work on something to say enthusiastically.
That they would have a pre-produced video ready to go.
That's terrible.
Oh, it's awful.
It's terrible.
It's awful. So let's compare this. This is when Poilievre was running in the election. Remember, he was doing his own election ads that weren't even Conservative Party ads. Let's listen to this.
Okay. Look at those prices for homes, gas, or food. No wonder we're spending more and making less. We had to spend during the pandemic, but Trudeau's plan to borrow forever means inflation and bankruptcy. Instead, let's become the best place for businesses to build, hire, and make stuff. Here in Canada, make more, cost less. Paychecks, not debt.
It sounds like an Aaron Waxman ad.
But really,
I mean, it's
listen to
much
the two.
better.
You listen to the two. Who's built to win?
Absolutely.
Right? Who's built to win?
I have no. I cannot debate that whatsoever.
Crazy.
Yeah.
He's got to be better than that. He's got to be better than that.
They should take that down and redo it. I don't know how they haven't watched it yet and said, you know what? Let's just pull that one and start over again.
Delete.
And join a group of men and women who are...
Join a group of men and women. Thank you for watching my video.
Built to win.
Built to win. Yeah. That's crazy. All right. Okay. Yeah, 2 years. 2 years of the pandemic. I'll have some things to say about this after the 10 o'clock news when we take some calls. But how would you say your life has changed in 2 years? Has it changed at all in significant ways?
Yeah, there are some significant ways. I'm the president and ambassador for the Canadian Continence Foundation, so I do a lot of talks and I travel around. I had booked going to Cleveland and PEI and had a couple of other, and I usually, speak to healthcare workers in that particular field. So, losing all of those opportunities, we had a lot of momentum with the Canadian Continence Foundation. We had some things that, that we wanted to roll out. We had some funding in place to do it, lost all the funding.
Wow.
So we've certainly struggled on that side of things. And I think as well, Rob, I had some momentum as well, right? I returned to Ottawa. I was invited back to host Daytime Ottawa. Looking forward to emceeing events and supporting charities and getting out and networking with people, and all of that gone. Right,
Wow.
had a little taste of it as I came back, and then everything sort of fell apart. Now, at the same time, like you, I'm very fortunate that I had work and I kept working, and I did Operation Support Local and Let's Chat with Derick, and I had opportunities which I'm grateful for, but. There was some big changes for me. There's no doubt, but in a much better position than many people. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's kind of when I look at kind of where we are, and it's been a tough 2 years. But I count myself as one of the lucky ones. I know, David, it's been tough for both of us. Like it's. For 2 years, day after day after day after day, covering one news story, right?
No, it's true.
All the time. It's very tiring. It's
because
very stressful.
You had Trump for 4 years, which took everyone's attention.
Right.
Yeah. And then we went into COVID for 2 straight years that took all of the attention, left all of the other stories by the wayside. There are other things happening, but... when that's the
But at the same time, we had jobs to go to.
Yeah.
We never missed paid checks. Not struggling to pay bills or anything like that. So, truly blessed, really.
Absolutely.
But gosh, difficult at the same time. I'll say, but the most difficult thing is I did lose some friends and family members. Not from COVID, but from other health-related issues, and not being able to go to wakes and grieve and celebrate life and things like very difficult.
I've seen some divide. I've probably lost, one family member and probably a few friends with this divide of. the anti-vaccination movement and
really?
mandates and that sort of thing, which is certainly a shame.
Yeah, it has divided
a lot of people. There's no doubt. I think most of us are on the same page when it comes to it, but there's a lot of people out there that I don't know, just didn't see eye to eye with.
No, really,
right?
Yeah. Okay, all right. The baseball lockout is over. Are you a big baseball fan?
No, I'm a bandwagon guy.
Yeah, I'm kind of a bandwagon guy.
And they have an exciting young team. I mean, even regardless of them not making the playoffs the last 2 years, certainly enjoyed watching them. Exciting team to watch. I'm kind of that bandwagon guy. I kind of wait until, they start sniffing at the playoffs. But that young, exciting team continues. The fact that there was any thought of a lockout with the amount of money that everybody is making.
Well, that's it.
That they were losing a lot of fans. I mean, it would have been a disaster for baseball, right, to lock out.
And it's been on its viewership and has been on the decline. People aren't going to, they're having a tough time getting viewers. Are people going to dedicate 3-4 hours to watching a baseball game?
Guys are making $350 million contracts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's sickening.
Right. And there's so much need and want out there. So many people are struggling.
Unbelievable.
The idea that people are fighting over a minimum salary of $750,000 a year is like a major turnoff for me. But anyway, all right. At noon, you'll be back.
At noon, I'll be back filling in for Sam LaPrade.
All right,
got a good lineup. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Dr. Vera Etches on 2 years of pandemic life. Coming right up. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Fun,
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
In 2 years since the World Health Organization declared a COVID-19 pandemic, 2 years since the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed here in Ottawa, and in 2 years, just looking at the Ottawa Public Health COVID-19 dashboard this morning, it says 65,000 confirmed cases in our city, and sadly 752 people in Ottawa died with COVID-19. So, to look back on the last 2 years, we are joined once more by the Chief Medical Officer of Health for the City of Ottawa, Dr. Vera Etches. Good morning, Dr. Etches.
Good morning, Rob.
What are you thinking about today?
I am, of course, thinking of the 752 people who've died, their family, their friends. That is a huge loss, and I know it has affected many. And at the same time, I'm thinking about how that's just one type of loss. There are many people who've had other kinds of losses, whether even it's their business or their ability to see friends and celebrate important milestones. I know many people have deferred weddings. There's so much has happened that has been really at the root very socially isolating, and the economic damage has been huge. So this makes me think we need to mark that. We need to grieve that. It's real. And at the same time, we have to find ways to carry on and support each other. To go through into the future that is better, knowing right now things are better given the level of immunity in our population. And that's the other thing that really stands out to me. It's what people have done. The people of Ottawa have looked after each other by wearing masks, by getting immunized. It's tremendous, and I'm so thankful for that.
I was speaking with Dr. Doug Manuel yesterday, senior scientist at the Ottawa Hospital, a member of the Science Advisory Table. And for the first time, I've been interviewing him for 2 years. For the first time, he was really optimistic. He's usually when I speak with him, he's very cautious, very cautious. Would you say right now, because I know you've been very cautious as well, would you say you're feeling optimistic right now?
I would say that I'm spending a lot more of my energy now thinking about how we can use what we've learned from the pandemic response to do better into the future. We're spending less and less time on having to actually manage outbreaks and COVID. Things are better, absolutely. And of course, we do want to be ready for if things change again. That's what this virus has continued to challenge us with. But things are dramatically different when you take the time on an anniversary to look back year by year. You can see last year hardly anybody had a vaccine at this point. And so things are definitely improved. And we do see typically into the summer things have gotten better. People have these tools now. People are so clear about what they can do to decrease transmission by wearing their masks, keeping distance, having smaller gatherings. So these are things that people can pick up, they can continue. And so I do have a lot of confidence that we will continue to keep things manageable into the future.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to litigate pandemic-related decision-making all over again because it's been a difficult 2 years for everyone, especially people in your position in leadership positions. Everyone's been trying the best they can. If any mistakes were made, it wasn't out of malice. But I'm glad you put it that way, that there are opportunities to learn. And because I wanted to ask you about that. From a public health point of view, your realm, what do you think has been learned as a result of all of this so that we're better prepared the next time there's a similar crisis? What's the learning opportunity here?
Oh, there are so many. Of course, recognizing the loss of life that has happened, I think one of the most important ones is about long-term care homes and how they're operated, how they're supported. The idea that families and friends are important caregivers needs to be maintained rather than trying to keep everybody out of a long-term care home during an outbreak. We have to continue with finding ways to enable caregivers to be there and support. We need to think about really the whole healthcare system and how connected it is, because there have been challenges in the functioning of the healthcare system just because of the difficulty in moving people from one part to another. I think the other thing that stood out for us as public health practitioners is how challenging it is to communicate in a situation where the science keeps changing, the virus keeps changing, the context keeps changing. So we are thinking about how we learn and find ways to help with science communication. The science of vaccination has been amazing. It's life-changing. That we want to continue to build understanding of how they work, counter the myths, because the myths have been problematic. I think we also have learned we need to take a look at the policies that enable people to do their part to stay home when they're sick, and support employers so that employers can enable their staff to be home when they're sick. These are important things that we've taken a look at through this pandemic.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So the mask mandates are ending. I don't really want to get into that, but if the current trend holds, we could be in a much better place by the end of April, May. But still the side effects, or maybe better said, the collateral damage is going to be with us for some time to come. And I'm thinking about things like surgery delays, the backlogs there, still the struggle to access mental health services, especially publicly funded mental health services, especially for young people, things like addiction treatment services. What do you think maybe some of the stresses in healthcare from longer term because of the pandemic?
Well, right. You've named them, the big ones for sure.
Okay.
I think one I would add to that list is that primary care access has been shown to be so important. And so...
Do you mean, I'm sorry, doctor?
A family doctor.
A family doctor, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, a family doctor is really often the point of entry into healthcare system. Rob, I just wanted to make sure you're still there.
I'm still here, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry. There was a call trying to come through. The primary care system is really important. We've seen that, and yet it's been shown also that not everyone has that point of access. So I think this is something we need to look at very seriously. People haven't been able to do that preventive care. Sometimes, checking their blood pressure, making sure their children's other vaccines are up to date. There's a lot of catch-up to do in that regard as well. And some of those things keep people healthier from having to go into the other parts of the healthcare system. And so public health is taking a look at that and what we can do to support innovations that maybe bring different support to communities where healthcare providers aren't there.
Okay.
We're really quite aware that it's not even across the city, the kinds of supports people have in the healthcare system, and we need to address that.
Okay. Finally, how are you doing, and how are the members of your staff doing?
Well, thank you. I'm well. I've been consciously focused on making sure I do the things that will help me stay well by getting outside every day and keeping physically active. There's times when it didn't feel like I had enough energy to do that, but I've set some new goals, and I think the team is finding energy in looking ahead, in thinking about how do we help the community recover, and how do we transform some of our services and do things differently given the new community needs that we see. So this is important work that we're excited to do, and I think our focus is turning to supporting the community through this recovery. As you say, things are still very hard for many people, and we need to think about the supports that need to continue.
Well, nevertheless, the days are longer. The weather is a little warmer. So things, I hope, are looking up with more permanence. Dr. Etches, I thank you so much for your time and all your hard work and your leadership over the last 2 years. Thanks again for joining me this morning.
And thank you for being consistently there to share information as well.
Coming down with a case of cabin.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 11th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, -4. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Despite a drop in the national unemployment rate, the rate actually went up in Ottawa last month. 337,000 more jobs were filled nationwide. Possibly the trucker protest downtown, which affected many businesses, is the reason why the Ottawa number did not improve. In fact, went down. In Gatineau, the rate is better this month at just 4.6% unemployed. StatsCan says the unemployment rate did drop below pre-pandemic levels.
The jobless rate has dropped to 5.5%, down from 6.5% in January. That's the lowest it's been since the 5.7% recorded in February 2020, just before the start of the pandemic. The unemployment rate would have been 7.4% last month if Statistics Canada had included people who wanted a job but didn't look for one. Don Kelly, The Canadian Press.
City News Time 10:04. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A winter weather travel advisory now in effect for Ottawa and area. We'll have some flurries at times through the day, but it's after 4 o'clock. That's when we get into the steadier snow, about 5 centimeters and another 5 centimeters overnight. Should all come to an end, though, early Saturday. 0 for the high, -4 for the low, -3 Saturday, and some more flurries on Sunday, but colder air, the high about -4. For today, the high 0.
And right now it is -4 in Ottawa. It's -3 degrees in Smiths Falls. Russia appears to be pushing its offensive westward. More shelling and airstrikes pummeling Mariupol, a port city that has been without food supplies, running water and power for some 10 days now. Ukraine's president has responded to Russia's claims the U.S. is financing biological weapon laboratories in Ukraine.
Asked about the serious accusation, Ukrainian President Zelensky says no chemical or any other weapon of mass destruction has been developed on his land. And if the Russians do something of the sort against us, they will receive the most severe sanction response. The UN Security Council has scheduled a meeting at Russia's request to discuss its claims. Tom Rivers, ABC News at the Foreign Desk.
And I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
And it's the Friday free-for-all. Our favorite hour of the week around here. We don't come up with the topics. You come up with the topics, and we just do our best to roll with it. We usually end up talking about things that have been in the news because we're kind of in the news business around here, and there's been no shortage of news this week. It has not been a slow news week. But we don't have to stick to the big news stories. Doesn't have to be a big news story at all. Doesn't have to be a news story at all. Whatever it is, within reason. We're usually good to go with it. So every single line is available there right now. 750-1310. 750-1310. 613-750-1310. I can get the conversation started while we wait for some calls. I can get the conversation started this morning by asking you some questions. It has been 2 years. 2 years, okay, since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic. What has been the biggest change in your life in the last 2 years? Okay. How is your life different than it was 2 years ago? And what's been the hardest part of the last 2 years? What's been the hardest part of the last 2 years? Would you say? I'm just throwing it out there to kind of get the conversation going. I mean, 2 years. 2 years of pandemic life. My goodness. 2 years ago today. And look at the place where we've arrived. I don't know if this is much better. It's like kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire, and I don't even know if we're out of the frying pan yet. But I remember thinking back 2 years ago, this will be over in 2 weeks. Right? We'll shut things down. We will help those affected by the shutdown for 2 weeks because we'll flatten the curve. Remember that buzz phrase? Flatten the curve. We got to flatten the curve. Save the healthcare system. We have to have some surge capacity for the healthcare system. We have to flatten the curve, and here's the curve. You see the way the curve is going the wrong way. We wanted to go it down. 2 weeks. Give it 2 weeks. Let's see where we are in 2 weeks. We'll watch some Netflix. We'll order some takeout, and in a few weeks, this will all be over. David was on a golfing trip, scrambling to get back to Canada.
Simpler times.
Right? He had to isolate. He had just gotten hired. He had to isolate for the first 14 days of his employment.
Yeah,
I worked self-isolation.
I worked for a week. I went on vacation for a week, and then I isolated for 2 weeks. That was my first month on the job.
Gosh, no idea how wrong we were going to be, eh? Ignorant bliss, I guess. Ignorant bliss. Anyway, it doesn't have to be on that topic. It could be on anything. Johnny, Ottawa. Johnny.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, Johnny. How are you?
Good. So I'm calling from possibly a place of ignorance, so I don't want to come off going in a different direction. So
That's okay.
Wanted to talk about gas prices.
Go right ahead, sir. Yep.
I was kind of lamenting with my wife last night about, pandemic hits, gas prices in our area. We're just in Dunrobin, so they dropped below 70 cents a liter. I think I filled up at 68 or something for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And then that was during, our first major lockdown. And then, fast forward 2 years and a few more lockdowns, gas did nothing but go back up to 130-ish. I mean, up and down from there. So I get this spike in the last 2 weeks or so because of the war and all of that. But what I'm trying to figure out is how come there was no other drop during some of those other lockdowns? And, more importantly, from a Canadian perspective, why aren't we maximizing more on our own natural resources? I know there's infrastructure issues and all of that. Even if we have to start now and it happens in 5 years, or maybe it happens in 10 years, but at least eventually we'll get there. So what's the major roadblock for all of this from a Canadian natural resource perspective?
Well, I don't have the answers specifically to these questions. I would speculate on, why didn't the price of, say, gas go down when we had other lockdowns? Well, we had that big economy right next door that really wasn't locked down at times when we were locked down, right? I would suspect that's probably one reason, right? That economy was continuing to reopen. People were going out again, back to work again, driving again. I'm told the New York rush hour for cars is like New York City, pretty much back to normal now. Crazy traffic.
Oh, wow.
So, that wasn't happening here.
It just seems like we're we're giving our natural resources away in a sense that, the prices, we're selling everything super cheap.
Well, you could say we're not making the most of it. And, I think a lot of the blame for that goes on the current government that we have here in Ottawa, which has been openly hostile to the industry and has talked quite openly about the need to phase out fossil fuels sooner rather than later because it believes that the biggest challenge facing us is climate change.
Yeah, which is
that's where they're coming from. I mean, even this week, I don't know if David can find the clip, but even this week, Mr. Trudeau was in Germany. Germany has done a big about face because it's totally reliant on Russia for so much of its natural gas, for example. Now, we have a lot of natural gas. We have to have liquefied natural gas to get it over there. But he was asked by a reporter, look, Germany needs energy. We have lots of energy. Are you two talking about that? Mr. Trudeau talked about mentioned net zero, how we have to hasten the transition to cleaner sources of energy. He didn't seem all that seized by the current energy crisis.
Oh, I know, and it's crazy.
Right? And the carbon tax goes up in 3 weeks.
I know we buy from multiple sources outside of Canada, and I'm not against. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of Canadians aren't against supporting markets that rely on that. But why we're pushing out so much of that to bigger countries that aren't going to go belly up if Canada's not buying fuel from them, or I don't want to go down the whole Russia road. Or
No, but you're frustrated, like a lot of people. We
174 to fill up my truck yesterday.
Oh yeah, I hear you, Johnny. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I got rid of my truck. I had a Ram. I was like, I can't afford this anymore.
I told my wife I'm going to get a second job so I can pay for my gas. All right, Paul, that's all I wanted to do.
All right,
that's
Johnny.
All I wanted to bring up.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you. But do you have the Trudeau clip? Like, does this sound like a guy who understands Johnny's pain here? Go ahead.
Obviously, Canada has a very strong energy sector with thousands of good Canadian jobs working hard, even as we look very ambitiously towards transitioning towards net zero. We know there is a continued need for oil and gas that has been heightened because of the conflict with Russia. We also talked about ways where we can partner not just in the short and medium term on energy supplies, but also staying focused every step of the way on that transition towards
every step of the way on that transition. Every step of the way, we're focused on the transition. Kim in Orleans. Kim.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah,
How
hi,
are
Kim.
you this
I'm
morning?
good, Kim. Thank you. It's Friday. I'm great. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So I'll get to the point. I've been following CPAC and the news, and Trudeau with this trip. This trip is out of his league. These leaders know why they're there. We don't like what's going on in Ukraine and people in Russia being taken into jail. I think, as I observe, this is also a photo op. He's wearing a mask, he's not wearing a mask, pictures here, pictures there. And why is Freeland there? She's our finance minister. Is she running the show?
She has a deep emotional attachment to it because she's a Ukrainian Canadian, right?
Well, there are lots of Ukrainians.
Yeah, but there's 1.4 million of them. None more, but probably none more prominent than her, and she speaks the language too, which may be beneficial, right?
Well, I don't know. But what was the purpose of this trip? To counter Russia propaganda, censorship, and Trudeau?
Well,
there's
I
so
understand.
much.
Maybe you can do the whole thing by Zoom, I suppose.
Yeah, but Trudeau also promotes democracy, how it is important to speak with people with different views. When he didn't visit with other people,
I guess as long as those views are acceptable views, right?
Yeah, and he doesn't support, he had a photo op with the military in Latvia. But what's he doing with our military? My heart just breaks for what we don't have with our military. Yeah. So I don't know what his purpose there is, other than all I'm seeing are photo op.
I understand. And it was, the reporters have been asking him some pretty tough questions. They asked him 2 days in a row, what are you going to do about the military? We're supposed to spend 2% of our GDP as part of our NATO commitment. We don't come anywhere close to that. It's like 1.3%. If we wanted to meet the 2% target, we'd have to increase the budget for national defense by 70%.
Yeah.
They asked him about that 2 days in a row.
He doesn't answer.
He wouldn't answer. No. He wouldn't commit to that. All right, Kim.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But he'll take a photo op, though. Sure. Rob Snow Show, City News Talk Back Hour, Friday, free for all. Be right back.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous, and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks, and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
According to our Toronto correspondent who covers Queen's Park quite often, Richard Southern for City News has tweeted that the Ford government is establishing an esports scholarship. So esports is like another way of saying video games. $1 million over 2 years for a scholarship for post-secondary students in esports and related programs.
Okay, I've got some more here. Financial assistance to students enrolled in programs related to the game design, development, marketing, and innovation industry that may lead to a career in similar fields.
All right, well, I guess that's legitimate.
I guess so.
I kind of misinterpreted like hey, can I get a scholarship to play video games?
Video game design.
Video game design.
Not
yeah,
an easy field.
No, video game design is...
It's a very competitive thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a huge industry.
Coding. It's just computer coding.
No, but it's a huge industry.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, you look at, Microsoft. Didn't Microsoft just buy EA Sports for something like $1 gazillion or something
The
like
government
that?
news release says the gaming industry directly supported more than 55,000 full-time jobs in Canada last year.
It wasn't... Microsoft bought the company that makes Call of Duty, whatever that company is, for like $1 gazillion, because then there were all kinds of questions about whether Call of Duty would be available on a PlayStation platform or whether it would be exclusive to the Xbox.
Activision Blizzard.
Yeah.
Was that
and how
company.
much did they pay for that company?
$95 a share, $68.7 billion.
Yeah.
All cash.
Right. Yeah. Big business, right? Big business. Huge business. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I understand that. In the West End, Steve.
Yes. Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, Steve. Thanks.
Good. I'm just wondering if anybody else is going through a problem that I've been getting. 2 years ago, I went to take my niece to my great niece to a hockey game. She's a hockey freak there for the 67s.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, the game was canceled because the pandemic came in with the lockdown. They said okay, and they sent me a thing telling me it was canceled, that they would refund my tickets if I want, or they'd give me 2 free tickets to replace them. So I said that's fine.
Right.
And we let that go. Then the season was canceled.
Yeah.
So then I was told that I would get 2 free tickets for a game and 2 free tickets also for the season opener this year. Now, when the season opener started, they said, oh, it's limited. Then we find out the next day it's totally full open, and yet no tickets. Now, I've tried contacting them 5 times now about just refunding my money for the 2 tickets, and I get no response.
Wow.
I got all sorts of response when they're trying to sell me stuff.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if anybody else is going through this, too.
So you either want 2 tickets or a refund for the 2 that you bought?
Well, now it's been going on so long, I just want the refund.
Just want the refund. Okay.
Yeah, I get no reply when I'm asking for that.
All right. Okay. All right, Steve. Maybe somebody at OSEG is listening. We'll see. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Ruben, Riverside South. Ruben.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah. Hi, Ruben.
I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Is Wellington still closed?
Is Wellington still closed? I don't know. I haven't been on Wellington Street. I couldn't tell you, to be quite honest with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you'd be downtown more. I don't go downtown.
I don't know. David lives downtown. Is Wellington Street closed, David? Or?
It's closed eastbound. You can still go westbound, but you can't turn right off of Kent Street. So it's tough to drive like into the market, but you can still take it to get to the Parkway. It's partially closed.
Partially closed. Okay. Yep.
Well, it's just that this was pretty important at some point that it got reopened.
Okay.
You know, when the convoy was there. That's just puzzling to me, but I personally think it should be completely closed and maybe have Spark Street reopened to traffic. And I think it would make it much better for people visiting, Parliament buildings and that kind of thing. It'd be much nicer if that was closed completely.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are also legitimate national security concerns, right, Ruben?
Yeah.
The Prime Minister's office is right there. Supreme Court right down the street, center block, the Senate. A lot of important stuff happening there. This is the point that Senator Vern White, the former Ottawa police chief, has been making for years, long before the convoy, that in the post-9/11 world, we should have learned our lesson by now, that that's a target-rich environment, is what he calls it. And, we're not really taking the national security risks seriously. So,
was it some talk of making it a national? What was that wording? They were going to make it a part of a national, part of a parliament building, or like.
Well, I think they want to make it into kind of like a promenade, right? Something like a promenade. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there's also an idea that there would be a tramway that would kind of go between Ottawa and Gatineau and would go up and down that stretch of road as well. So there are all kinds of plans in the works, but I think there's a lot of momentum behind once and for all taking private vehicle traffic off of Wellington Street. And I personally, I wouldn't have a problem with it, Ruben. So.
I wouldn't have a problem with it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ruben. Yeah. But it's interesting in the newspaper today, in Mohammed Adams' column in The Citizen, he does not favor the idea of taking traffic off of Wellington Street. That it's an important east-west thoroughfare, he says, for the downtown core. Leo, Richmond. Leo, good morning. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm good, Leo. Thank you. What's up?
What's up? Well, the COVID thing is still on my mind, but the thing that's most on my mind is what's going on in Eastern Europe. And the reason why I say that, I never told you this before, but I have two boys in the military, so I'm a military family.
Okay.
My oldest son is at CFB Edmonton in the Princess Patricia Light Duty Infantry.
Wow.
He's been there for 7 years. He's a master corporal. And I have my other son. He's in Cold Lake, Alberta, and he's a weapon technician specialist. So their guys are on call. Yeah. They're on call of the 3400 that may have to go down if things get out of hand in Eastern Europe.
Well, Andrew Leslie says they should be there already.
If you want to compare COVID and you want to compare being a father of a military boys and stuff like that, I'm a lot worried about the conflict in East Europe than I am about COVID.
Yeah. Because your boys might be there in the thick of it.
They might be there, and I have grandchildren, and I don't want to see those grandchildren being raised without fathers. You know what I mean?
Of course, Leo. Yeah.
And the thing is, that really worries me the most is that they're talking about using chemical, biological weapons. I mean, I wouldn't pass it by him that he would use them. Especially when you attack a maternity ward.
Well, they were used in Syria, right? They were used in Syria, and Russia is Assad's closest ally in that bloody conflict in Syria. So
exactly, and that's got to be the lowest of the lowest to attack a maternity ward, and they're denying it. Like, what are they saying? The Ukrainians did it themselves.
Well, what they are denying is that it's a hospital at all. That's what they're not denying that it was bombed. They're denying that it's a hospital.
Yeah, but there was a few.
I know. I'm not saying I believe them. I'm just saying what I know. I'm not saying I believe them. I'm just telling you what they're saying. They're saying, it's not even a hospital. It's that's where an enemy headquarters, a Nazi headquarters, or something like that is what they're saying. So.
But it's just like the Chinese Communist Party. Who's going to believe them, when they're saying all these things about the virus and all this stuff?
Yeah,
they're denying everything and all that.
Yeah. So, Leo, the first. What's the first casualty of war, Leo? What is the first casualty of war? It is the truth. We'll be back after the news. It's halftime. This is the Talk Back Hour on the Rob Snow Show, and this is City News.
It's your guide to...
News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 11th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, it's -3 degrees. In Smiths Falls, -2. And here's what's making news this hour. Russia is widening its offensive in Ukraine, saying it is bombing more military sites. Ukraine, though, says civilian areas, including homes and stores, are being bombed, happening with things like cluster bombs. Russia has requested a UN Security Council meeting. It feels there are chemical weapons being developed to use against them in Ukraine. That country categorically denying the claim, saying it's just an excuse for Russia to begin using that warfare. As we mark 2 years since the pandemic began, declared by the World Health Organization, the province is reporting another decrease in the number of people in hospital with COVID. 717 people today compared to 742 yesterday. The ICU number has dropped as well by 4. StatsCan says the ratio of household debt to disposable income hit a record level in the fourth quarter. Mortgage borrowing rose, disposable income fell. The agency says on a seasonally adjusted basis, household credit market debt as a proportion of the disposable income rose to 186.2%. in quarter 4. The agency also reporting the national unemployment rate dropped to 5.5%. That is a pre-pandemic mark. In Ottawa, though, the rate rose in February, possibly due to the shuttered businesses in the downtown due to the protest. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
On the Friday free-for-all. So, wide open on topics, wide open. We've come up with topics all week. Now, it's your turn. Beverly in the West End, you're on City News. Good morning.
Yeah, hi, Rob.
Hi, Beverly.
I tried to get a hold of you when you were doing the trucker thing, but I couldn't get through. COVID-19 won't be forgotten by me because June 19th is my birthday, and I'm a senior pushing towards a couple of years to 80. It's been traumatic. Lost 2 brothers and brother-in-laws, not to COVID and family. But I said when these truckers did the stuff downtown, they're going to cause a World War. Then the war broke out. I thought, oh, my God, they'll think I'm a witch. Anyway, it's been very hard, and they've isolated me because good companions and Jim Watson, all these downtown that I go to. And my daughter's a PSW. They worked them to the hilt, and they did not treat them right. And we need help for our PSWs and people in Canada, not only money in the other place. And I'm acquainted with Ron Sobey because he was the best man at my friend's party wedding about 4 years ago. So I've been following you guys, but I won't forget COVID-19 and funerals and friends, and they were dropping off like flies. So I'm glad you're a hard man to get through to, Rob.
Well,
so
we're busy around here. We're busy around here.
Yeah, I know, honey.
Yeah,
and so it's just I'm glad to get through to you, but I'm hoping that we don't have a fourth wave. And like I said, I have nurses and everything and isolated, so it's been hard not seeing my daughter for 2 years, dearly, and that because she's a PSW. But I'm glad I got through to you, Rob, and God bless you all. And I hope we all get through this. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you. You know, what I have found when pandemic life is getting the most of me, and oh my goodness, in the last 2 years there have been a few days where it's gotten the most of me. I try and remind myself I've been lucky. Okay, I landed this job about 3 months before the pandemic, and it's been flat out ever since. I never lost a paycheck. I never had to collect the CERB. I never once wondered if my business would survive because I'm not a business owner. I never had to worry about paying the bills or being able to afford the basics. I don't have children in school. That was never an issue for me. Never had to juggle, homework and childcare responsibilities. I got to come to work every day. And most importantly, I got to come to work every day and, and socialize in a work environment. So when I look at it, I try to look at it through that lens. It puts things into a more positive perspective for me. It helps me get through kind of the down days. There have been a few down days, a Few down days. But I'm one of the lucky ones. My great sacrifice was to wear a mask and get vaccinated. Really. I would say over the last 2 years, the most difficult times over the last 2 years have been not being able to see people, especially family members. I didn't see my parents for 2 years, and not being able to say goodbye. Not being able to say goodbye. I've had family members pass away. I've had friends pass away in the last 2 years. None of them because of COVID, cancer, heart disease, Parkinson's disease, and just not being able to properly grieve, not being able to, to say goodbye, pay tribute, celebrate someone's life. I found that it's very difficult. It was very difficult. I have parents on the East Coast. My wife's children live on the West Coast. Not being able to see them for long periods of time took a toll on both of us. But I'm sure, everyone's got stories like these. I can't even imagine what it must have been like for people with loved ones in long-term care, not being able to see your family members in long-term care in their final day. I can't even imagine it. But anyway, I don't want to be all doomy gloomy. I don't want to be all doomy gloomy because it wasn't all doomy gloomy for me these last 2 years. And I hope we're coming out the other side of this now. Chris in Blackburn Hamlet. Chris.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that last little monologue there because I feel the same way. Never having to miss a paycheck and things like that. But
yeah.
I did miss the socializing part of it. The friends at work just going for coffee and stuff like that.
Yep.
It seems like a little thing, but it's not a little thing because we are human beings and we are, created to be with other human beings. That's our nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you hold, that's why when you put somebody in prison and you put them in solitary confinement, it's the worst thing you can do to them because it's torture not being around other people.
Yeah.
I originally wanted to call about the Wellington Street thing.
Okay.
I'm not, totally against the promenade idea, but I still am in favor of leaving Wellington open.
Okay.
I've lived in Ottawa most of my life since I was a child.
Yep.
And I still enjoy just driving down Wellington Street looking at the Parliament buildings. And if you close it off as a mall, then you can't do that anymore. And that's just one of those small little
Well, maybe
things
you could if you had the tram, or maybe you could, because the Parliament Hill is such a popular tourist destination, maybe you can make exceptions for tours or something like that,
Yeah, because say you have a friend who's in town maybe only for a couple of days, and
right.
you don't have a chance to let them have a full tour of the Parliament buildings to go inside.
Yeah.
But you say, I just want to drive you down past Parliament so you can see it.
Yeah.
Well, if you make it a promenade, then you can't do that. You have to stop and park and then go up there and then come back. And it's just nice to be able to drive down Wellington Street. I never tire of it.
Right. And for some people, it's a commuter route. I have no doubt for some people it's a commuter route.
Well, yeah, when I used to work on the Quebec side, says I take the bus and it would just come right down Wellington Street, and then I transferred to the Rideau Centre, and I always enjoyed that. As far as the mask mandate...
Well, you know the way things are in Ottawa, though, Chris. Right now, everybody's, what should we do, what should we do, what should we do? By the time somebody finally actually does something in Ottawa, 25 years will have passed. So, especially if they can't make up their minds who actually gets the final say, right? And here you have the city, you have the National Capital Commission, federal government. You would imagine that the city of Gatineau would want to have some say in that, right? Can you imagine being in those meetings? Can you imagine being in those meetings? There may be 50 people in those meetings, for crying out loud.
The red tape is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Just on the mask mandates quickly, I was listening to your show yesterday. I just understand, the people who are saying it was too soon. What choice would the Premier have if other provinces are already lifting their mandates and other countries around the world are lifting their mandates? How can you be the only one not lifting the mandates?
Yep. I'm with you, Chris. What we're doing in Ontario, I went through all the provinces. We're not any kind of outlier.
No.
We're not leading the way. We're not a big laggard either. We're just kind of in the middle of the pack. And then out of the blue yesterday, people are saying, well, there's Doug Ford, reckless conservative. Well, John Horgan runs an NDP government in British Columbia. Dr. Bonnie Henry lifted the mask mandate as of this morning. You don't have to wear a mask in New Democrat governed British Columbia, for crying out loud.
That's right.
Like the left coast. All right, Chris, thank you. Thank you to Shawville in the Pontiac. Keith.
I couldn't agree more with your last caller. I was thinking that was talking about closing down Wellington Street. I mean, how many times you bring people in and you give them a quick tour around, and if you can't drive down Wellington Street, it costs somebody $40, $50 just to go and take a look at the Parliament buildings.
Yeah.
That was closed down. So
yeah. Okay.
That's my point. What they could do is just keep maybe all the trucks off it, then they don't have to worry about the situation arising. But anyways, that's...
Well, as I said to the last caller, though, this is Ottawa, right? Mm-hmm. If you have a decision that has to be made and it involves the city, the federal government, the municipality of Gatineau, maybe even the provincial government in Quebec, who knows? Right. You and I will be long gone before they ever come to the conclusion of what to do with Wellington Street.
No, for sure. Well, look how long Spark Street Mall has been.
Spark Street Mall, LeBreton Flats, right? Yeah. All right, Keith. But yeah, I understand that point of view as well. I really do. Jim in Ottawa. Jim.
Yeah, I want to talk about the housing crisis.
Go right ahead, sir. What about it?
There was an article in the Citizen last fall, sometime last fall, and I'm not sure when. It was on a Saturday, but it was on the third page. Joanne Lokius was the reporter.
Okay.
And she was talking to Steve Pomeroy. Have you heard that name?
Steve Pomeroy. No, I don't recognize that name. Maybe.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure who he works for, but he had 4 points to help the housing crisis or the accommodation crisis.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
And it was a simple 4-point plan. Just a little article at the bottom of the third page. And if you could find this guy, I'm not sure whether he works for the city of Ottawa or who he works for.
David has found out who he works. Steve Pomeroy is head of Focus Consulting Group, a senior research fellow for the Center of Urban Research and Education at Carleton University, and has appeared at the Planning Committee before. So there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you could have him on, I think he's well worth listening to.
All right. Well, you know what, David? Get that guy's number, Dave, and we'll see what we can do, okay? Yeah, David's going to work on that for you, Jim.
Okay.
All right? Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
It was actually kind of funny yesterday the way the Planning Committee meeting went down, because a lot of the left-wing city councillors, they have this natural inclination to oppose anything that comes from the provincial government because it's a conservative government led by Doug Ford. So the big topic... I mean, it's kind of ridiculous how long that whole thing lasted, because they're responding to recommendations in a report that aren't even legislated right now. The government hasn't even decided what recommendations they're going to accept that's in that report. But the city is already saying, well, we don't like these 11, and fair enough, but the city councilors are just on and on and on and on about how that bad this report is, and the loss of local control, and the lament for neighborhood character and all of these things. Let's hear from the delegates, I guess, thinking that all the delegates are going to agree with them. And quite a few actually appeared before the Planning Committee and said, you should be doing what the provincial government is doing. Please don't do what you want to do. You're only making it worse. 10:45, Rob Snow Show. Friday, free-for-all talkback hour. This is City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our center is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the center. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they're both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
To talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Yeah, final, what do we have? About 10 minutes here for some calls. At 750-1310, Friday, free for all. Last chance to have at me for the week, for the entire week. Ruth in Canada.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob. Ruth, how are you?
A lot of people don't realize out there that China, India, Africa do not pay carbon tax because they are an undeveloped country. And there's others under there. I'm not sure of the other people.
Well, they don't have a carbon tax in the United States, for crying out loud.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Right. But anyways, this is criminal, what Trudeau's doing. And he should stop that tax on our gases because we can't afford these gas prices going up like this. People have got to stand up and stand their ground against. It used to be governments for the people, by the people. Now it's governments for themselves, by themselves. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. We're getting such a dictatorship.
Okay. I don't think we're quite a dictatorship yet. We still do have elections. It's a minority parliament, Ruth. Okay. Could be an election anytime. Could be an election. It would help if the Conservative Party had a leader. Stan in Ottawa South. Stan.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, Stan.
The reason I called was La Breton Flats.
Yeah.
It triggered the memory. I was a paper boy in La Breton Flats, and I used to deliver papers to all the houses.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now, as you say, 60 years gone by, nothing's happened. Okay.
Well, I mean, stuff has happened, but it's, the War Museum is there now. There's been the thing is, though, there's been a lot of condo development, which you would think is, you can put condos on any empty lot in the city. Why did you have to put them on La Breton Flats, right? I thought you were supposed to put something of cultural significance there or whatever. The whole Senators thing fell apart, and that was really too bad. I was hoping the Sens would go there.
Fish marina or something like that?
Yeah. What's the word, David? An aquarium. That's right. An aquarium. Yeah. You know what, Stan? I thought that was a crazy idea. It's come up all the time. Well, whenever there's been a significant parcel of land that's been vacant. I don't know if you remember. You must. Do you remember the Daily building, Stan?
Yes, sir. The Daily building on the corner of. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, right next to the Chateau Laurier.
That's right.
Right? Yeah, 700 Sussex is there now, the high-end condo tower.
To Woolworths there for the chocolate soda.
Like, first of all, that building, they left it decrepit for years and years and years and years. It became a total eyesore. It was derelict, and finally they tore it down, and then they fought for another probably 10 years about what to build there, right? And then they finally built 700 Sussex. But people used to call me and say we should put an aquarium there too, like whatever. But anyway, I always thought this idea everybody wants to have an aquarium. But then I went to the aquarium that they have in Toronto next to the Sky Dome, the Ripley's. It's Ripley's Aquarium. I'll tell you what, it's a pretty cool place. Have you been there, David, to that Ripley's Aquarium in Toronto?
Yes.
Very cool.
Another good one that I always liked that we did as day trips when you're a school kid in Ottawa is the Biodome in Montreal, which also has a large aquarium.
I haven't been there, but
it's like an aquarium to the max. They do, well, not just it's like an indoor zoo, basically.
Indoor zoo,
yeah,
okay. See, yeah.
I would love that if we had that in Ottawa. I would go.
So an aquarium is actually, now that I've been to one, it's kind of cool. Well,
maybe we need to dream small. It's like we couldn't get the arena done. What if we start with an aquarium? We could work up to an arena.
Sure enough. So 2 years, David, of you and me doing this pandemic radio show. Really, was for the longest time. It was like pandemic radio, right?
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So what are you thinking about today? What's going through your mind? I mean, 2 years. Like, how would you say your life has changed?
Well, I was reflecting on that earlier, and it's weird for those of us who are in my age bracket. I mean, if you think back to when you were 22, I was 22 when the pandemic started. I'll be 25 this summer.
Wow.
Like those 3 years are usually you're doing a lot of socializing, maybe a lot of partying, you're meeting a lot of people. It's very
a lot of people are in their university days.
You're that's like the social prime time of your life. But so I think that I probably benefited from the pandemic professionally because I spent a lot more time working and focusing on my career.
But you're probably socially stunted.
I definitely am. And no, but seriously, like when I do go out and socialize these days, it feels rusty. I have social rust. It's like
social rust.
How do you have a conversation at a bar? Yeah. Like I find that I'm not socializing the way that I used to. It feels like
it's weird.
You need to get back in the groove of socializing.
I hear you, man. I think some of I think about over the last 2 years. One of the more difficult parts for people has been this roller coaster of pandemic health-related restrictions. Like things close down, cases go down. We open things up, cases go up. We close things down, we open things up. We close things down, we open things up, right? And just when you get your hopes up, your hope is it gets snatched away from you. And you have no control over it. And when I think about the way the government handled things here in Ontario, its handling of the pandemic, which has been, it's been kind of middle of the pack, right? It's not the best, not the worst, average. It's just been average. All of the opening and closing plans that it's had, like they've called them phases, they've called them stages, they've had color codes and different colors and red and orange and gray and green. And are you in the gray zone? Are we in the green zone? Like just ridiculous. 1 month they're using this benchmark and then they that benchmark's not going their way or meeting their timeline. So they use another benchmark and then here in Eastern Ontario, all you have to do is cross a bridge and you're in an entirely different province where they're doing something else entirely. Where you're not even allowed out of your house after 8 o'clock at night. And then in British Columbia, they're doing something else, and what they're doing in BC is entirely different than what they're doing in Atlantic Canada. There were times when we had province-wide restrictions, and then there were times when it went region by region, and then they would scrap region by region and go back to province-wide. Remember, we took a lot of calls from people in Ottawa, but they were from Toronto. And this was right after they closed things down post-Boxing Day. And they were saying how ridiculous it is if you live on one side of Steeles, I think is the road, right? In Toronto, you live on this side of the street, your shop is allowed to open, and if you live on the other side of the street, you're not allowed to open because that's where the border is. Walmart and Costco are allowed to be open. Main Street has to be closed. And I think the silliest part of it all was when they had that, like Walmart could be open, but you couldn't go into aisle 7 or whatever. Because that's where they sold the non-essential items. Like you can't buy nail polish.
You could buy
like insanity
socks, but not baby food, but not baby socks.
That's
that was
right.
Another one. Yeah,
just the silliness, total nonsense. And what did that do? It took a toll on trust, and that's going to be one of the legacies of the pandemic. Is the loss of trust in all kinds of things. In political leadership, there's a lot of hypocrisy on display by some political leaders who are caught not following the rules that they were imposing on everyone else. A lot of trust in government itself, that government was not there for some great social purpose. Frightening increase in what I call anti-science. I put a lot of blame for that on social media and the wicked ability of social media to spread nonsense like wildfire and give prominence to people who peddle in lies. The power of social media. Take someone who peddles in this stuff. Because you have to remember the social media giants, their business models, they're built on division. They're built on anger and resentment. That's Facebook's secret sauce. It's called the social validation feedback loop. If you took someone who posted, say something like, masks are a symbol of tyranny, you post that on Facebook, right? Compared to someone who stands on the street corner and says, masks are a symbol of tyranny. Well, the person on the street corner is probably viewed as a raving lunatic. Whereas the person who posted on Facebook, what happens? It gets liked, it gets shared, it gets passed around, it gets commented on. And what does that do? It validates the person who posted it on social media. They feel as though they've been validated. So what do? They post more. And they post more, and they post more. And every time they post and someone comments and someone likes, they get a little shot of dopamine all along the way. The whole business of social media is validating whatever it is you believe, whether that's your belief in the benefits of a vegetarian diet or the Bill Gates vaccine microchip conspiracy. I seriously think social media, once this pandemic is over, social media will have proven to have eroded social cohesion. That's it for the Talkback Hour. Thanks for all your calls. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 11th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 3 degrees. It's minus 2 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ukrainians are scrambling to get out, not only of the capital city, but other cities as well. Several developments in Ukraine today. Here's City News reporter Caitlin Lee.
Thousands continue to flee the capital of Kyiv as Russian troops close in. Humanitarian aid being provided in a nearby town to help provide safe transport out of the country. But AC's Ian Pannell says those in other cities around Ukraine are having more trouble leaving.
Especially in the port city of Mariupol, which has been under siege, almost under total blockade for over a week now. They have no electricity, they have no power, they have no heating. Water and food supplies are low. There are reports of bodies on the street and mass graves being dug.
The UN Human Rights Office looking into credible reports cluster bombs are hitting civilian targets. A statement saying this could amount to war crimes.
Allegedly, we are preparing a chemical attack. This makes me really worried because we've been repeatedly convinced. If you want to know Russia's plans, look at what Russia accuses others of.
The U.S. also making more economic moves against Russia today. President Joe Biden calling for the removal of most favored nation status for Russia. CNN also reporting a ban on seafood and vodka imports is coming. Caitlin Lee, City News.
Now, a growing list of companies are pulling out of Russia in response to the invasion. Here's reporter James Longman, who is in Moscow.
2 weeks into this crisis, over 330 multinational companies have paused operations here. The effects are already very visible. The biggest mall in St. Petersburg, stores have been shuttered there as sanctions bite. McDonald's is due to close its stores here Monday, and we've seen big lines at other Western outlets as people rush to make one last purchase.
Now, Russian President Putin has said there have been positive developments in talks between the warring countries, but he did not offer any details on what those developments might be. City News time 11:04. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A winter weather travel advisory now in effect for Ottawa and area. We'll have some flurries at times through the day, but it's after 4 o'clock. That's when we get into the steadier snow, about 5 centimeters and another 5 centimeters overnight. Should all come to an end, though, early Saturday. 0 for the high, -4 for the low, -3 Saturday. And some more flurries on Sunday, but colder air, the high about -4. For today, the high 0.
And right now, -3 in Ottawa, -2 degrees in Smiths Falls. As we mark 2 years since the COVID pandemic was declared by the World Health Organization, the province is reporting another decrease in hospitalizations today. 717 people compared to 742 yesterday. ICU numbers have also dropped by 4 as well. The case count in Ontario, just over 2,000 new cases, 170 of them in Ottawa, 33 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. Both Eastern Ontario and Renfrew have 10 additional cases. StatsCan says the economy added 337,000 jobs in February, more than offsetting the loss of 200,000 in January. The unemployment rate fell to pre-pandemic levels. In Ottawa, the rate actually rose, though, possibly due to the number of businesses affected in the downtown through a good portion of February due to the convoy protests. RBC economist Claire Fan says today's report is suggesting that overall the labor market has more than healed from the historic losses seen at the start of the pandemic.
Overall employment was running over 300,000 above levels in February 2020, immediately before the pandemic. And the unemployment rate actually dropped 0.2 below where it was in February 2020 as well. So everything is pointing to a really, really tight labor market.
And she says that means low unemployment and high job vacancies, and that will likely lead businesses to be offering higher wages in order to fill open spots. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Mark Taylor is a former city councillor for Bay Ward. He used to represent Bay Ward at the Ottawa City Council. He is vice president of resource development at United Way, Eastern Ontario. And he's here now to talk about 2 years of pandemic life, how it has impacted the charitable sector, nonprofits, organizations like the United Way, and in turn, how that hurts the most vulnerable here in our city. Mark Taylor, good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks very much for having me on.
Well, it's a great pleasure. When you think about 2 years of pandemic life, and here we are today, 2 years since the declaration of the pandemic, what's going through your mind today, Mark?
Yeah, it's probably the same as most people, just how much the world has changed, the world at large, and of course the world right around us, and the impact that COVID has had in all of our daily lives. Certainly for us at United Way, the last 2 years have really all been about working in pretty close quarters with our partners all across our community to ensure that the impacts that everybody was feeling, oftentimes they are disproportionately felt by the most vulnerable in our community. So we have worked tirelessly to ensure that we were addressing, some of those things, some of their basic needs, making sure that seniors and caregivers are supported. The whole sector itself is getting support. And of course, we saw an outsized impact of the recent occupation on some of the downtown community agencies that support the most vulnerable. We also want to make sure that we're addressing the learning loss that children and youth have faced, the mental health challenges we've all had, and of course, looking forward, how do we lay the best groundwork now for an equitable economic recovery so that as we all pull out of this and move past it, we don't leave behind, some of the most vulnerable, some of whom are the very people that we counted on as frontline workers.
What I want to call them shortcomings, I guess. Shortcomings have been maybe more exposed. They were there, but they became more prominent or more exposed because of the pandemic. What's your opinion there?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we experienced very early on in the pandemic, right? You remember 2 years ago, we all started using language like we're all in this together kind of thing. And then that evolved into, well, we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat, right? There was a while there where we kind of got head faked a little bit into maybe there was a recovery earlier coming. And you started hearing about that K-shaped economic recovery, which really meant that as some people rebounded and went back up, there were others who just kind of continued on a downward trend. And to your point, Rob, many of those things that impacted our community before that perhaps weren't as present, they became a lot more prevalent, right? The extent to which many in our community struggle to get by and just address their basic needs every day to ensure that they have life's essentials, that became exacerbated, right? Help for those seniors and caregivers I talked about, making sure that we didn't really have a good grasp as a community, I think, on just how many seniors in our community, many of them are, successful and prospering, and, we're blessed with that, of course, but there are many more who are isolated and vulnerable and at risk of developing, severe illnesses if they contract the virus kind of thing. And we didn't really have a good sense of just how many folks there were like that. So
plus just the isolation, itself, and seniors are always, as they grow older and their friends pass away or their partner's spouse pass away, they're at such great risk of becoming isolated to begin with. So then you throw in an infectious disease that can be deadly for seniors. Then it becomes very, very worrisome. For the community, right?
Yeah, and when you talk about the mental health impacts on seniors, from isolation, we of course recognize there were mental health impacts on all of us, right? Even those of us who have been fortunate enough to kind of get through the past 2 years and really kind of look at ourselves and, well, you know what, I'm pretty healthy overall. I didn't get the virus, or I did and it was mild, and perhaps I didn't have any employment distress or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that your own mental health wasn't impacted, right? Many people missed milestones in their families' lives, and those are important things that we use to mark kind of our time here, there are many people who still felt that they were troubled with isolation or lack of connectivity to each other. And Zoom is not a proxy for, talking to your friends and your family in person. So we saw that. We saw that with the huge increase in crisis lines and people reaching out for help. And, we thank people for reaching out for help when they need it. We want to make sure that there's always someone there to be able to answer the call, no matter how someone reaches out, no matter when someone reaches out.
Okay. So as the Vice President of Resource Development with United Way Eastern Ontario, Resource Development, surely there are conversations happening. Look, it's been 2 years of pandemic life here. There are going to be lingering effects. We talked a little bit about this with Dr. Etches this morning, whether that's backlogs in the healthcare system, the need for more mental health resources, substance abuse programs, all of these things that even as the pandemic recedes, these things are still very prevalent and will need to be addressed. So in terms of, what are you talking about at United Way these days about where you're going to deploy resources?
Well, some of those things that I talked about earlier, some of them will perhaps, be a little de-emphasized, of course, when we get back to kind of more in-person support capacity, but others will continue and persist, right? The mental health and crisis supports, we know that is going to continue to persist, and the need is going to exist for quite some time. We know that, the need around addictions coming out of mental health and crisis, of course, that is, numbers on those have gone up through the pandemic. That will persist. The vulnerable, the learning loss for children, particularly ones who are living in vulnerable communities, some kids have been fortunate enough to get through the pandemic and still make academic progress. Some kids have gotten through the pandemic really, and they haven't made any progress, but they haven't backslid. But there are a considerable number of kids in our communities, particularly in vulnerable communities or in groups of vulnerable peoples, who backslid, right? So they're going into grades, 2 years more advanced now, but they have backslid in their own education. So supporting them in catching up and supporting their parents and their caregivers and being able to help them do that, that'll be critically important. And as I said earlier, we heard about building back better. That was a big slogan, probably about a year ago when we started to dream about coming out. The importance of building, a better future for the people who've been sidelined in the pandemic, that is of critical importance to us. We call it by many different names. Some of them are kind of cryptic, like community wealth building. But what it really means is making sure that everybody in our community, no matter where they started, no matter where they are, has a fair shake and a fair shot at having a good life.
Okay. What are you seeing with charitable giving these days? What's the trend there?
Yeah, it's interesting because in our community, it's often a bit different. With Ottawa as kind of the center of our community, we reach from Prescott Russell, through Renfrew or through Ottawa, Lanark, and out through Renfrew counties. Wow. So it's a fairly big territory. Ottawa is the center of it and is the largest kind of municipality. And Ottawa is, because of its economic makeup, has been perhaps less affected than some other communities economically. And that translates to the giving. That being said, while we noticed that many people, there was a surge last year in people kind of stepping up to help. And we even saw that during the recent occupation, right? We saw some of our great community partners out there like Shepherds of Good Hope and others who, as soon as it came to light that they had experienced distress, people responded, right, very kindly. What I do find, though, is that now, we've entered into a point in time where there are many people out there who are worried about inflation. They're worried about potentially changing interest rates, and they're fatigued after years, right? So what started out several years ago is, let's dig deeper, let's give extra, let's tip that waitress more, that type of thing. That's becoming a little harder to activate in people. But what I would say is that, it is really great to see people starting to pivot from the discussion around rights to the discussion around responsibilities, right? We had a lot of discussion about rights that bubbled up during the occupation in Ottawa. I hear a lot of people talking about responsibilities, and among those things, in our community, we're pretty blessed to have people say, I believe that I'm responsible too, not just for myself, but to make sure that those in my community can get by. So, so we're really thankful for all of the folks who are reaching out to support us and support the work that we do. Of course, I would encourage people to go to our website, unitedwayeo.ca, and learn about the work we're doing. And if something there speaks to you, there's many ways you can get involved with our work.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective, your inside market. It's always so nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rob. Have a
Speak
great
soon.
day.
Yeah, you too. Mark Taylor, Vice President of Resource Development, United Way, Eastern Ontario. Coming up next, we'll talk some Senators hockey, some baseball, and some golf. A weekly look at sports with our good friend, Steve Warne. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I started, as I said, at Lester's Barbershop, and it was kind of, it was one of those things that it was just an opportune time for me to get into it, just because he had decided that he was going to retire after the fire, and then the opportunity presented itself that I could open my own shop. And so I went from a 150 square foot space on St. Patrick's Street to a 600 square foot space just on Beechwood to now here, and I'm in a 1,400 square foot space now. And I don't know, it's been an interesting journey because, you think that you're just going to be just you or a really small space, and then all of a sudden, you've got 10 other people working for you. You're in a much bigger space, and even incorporating the boutique. Last March, when all of this started, we closed down a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I'm going to say, being honest, part of it was social pressure. We shut down before everybody else did, and I'm watching all these other salons, just be really responsible and saying we don't want to be a part of the process. So we got ahead of it and closed, and then, the week later, the government's like, everybody's shutting down. And so it was a little nerve-wracking. I guess the first step of us, trying to innovate and just keep moving forward was when the salon is closed, right? It's like, what do you do? Our whole industry is based on being with people, cutting their hair, providing a service. You have to be people together to do that. You can't do that remotely at all. So one of the first things that I saw in our industry, what people were trying to do is they were selling their hair products that they had. And luckily, I've had a website that always had a web store in the back. I just never used it. So as soon as I saw that people were doing that, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to load up all my stuff. And so that worked out really, really well. And then from there, I managed to find a place that was like a wholesale website that allowed you to have net 60 days. So you don't have to, you can order all the stuff. You don't have to prepay any of it. There's free returns, all that. So that made it really easy for me to bring in other products and start trying to sell it. And so I went from selling hair products to shave products to bath and body products to a little bit of clothing and jewelry, and now it's just morphed into this whole, I want to make it a whole legit boutique. And by December of last year, I decided that this is a full-fledged thing and we're going to separate it. It's its own company. So it's really finding an opportunity that's there and running with it. So it's been really fun. Our clients are loving it. Our clients that have been here for a long time, they love it.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
In sports, there is a lot to talk about. With legendary Ottawa sports broadcaster, host of the Sens Nation podcast, SensNationHockey.com, Steve Warne. Welcome back, Steve Warne.
Thank you, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. So the Sens snapped a losing streak, and now they've put together a couple of back-to-back wins. How would you describe the week for the Ottawa Senators.
Well, I think they played pretty well. Looking at that Seattle game from last night, there's a standard case of taking your foot off the gas when you have the big lead. I think they really rallied after that miserable game against Arizona last Saturday, where Arizona jumped out to a 4-0 lead. Sens come back to make it 5-4, and then they give up another 4 goals to Arizona. They were stinging after that one, and I think they played pretty well since. Even the game in Vegas the next day where they lost with 5 seconds to go, that was a tough one. But nice victories for sure over both St. Louis and Seattle, so maybe they've righted the ship here down the stretch.
Okay. So if I had some hockey watching plans for the weekend, what's the Sens schedule looking like? What's going on with the Sens?
Well, just the one this weekend. They'll get the Chicago Blackhawks coming up tomorrow night.
Okay.
And the Hawks, like the Sens, are in the midst of just starting their rebuild. They're trying to kickstart things, I'm sure, and they're looking right now at what to do with old war horses like Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. I think you probably want to keep a guy like that around, ideally, because he's still a stud. And you got Marc-Andre Fleury there as well. So my point is it might be the final time you see those 3 guys in Hawks uniforms, for all we know.
Wow. And just, I forgot to put this on our list of things to talk about. I saw this morning Craig Anderson got his 300th win, which prompted me to look at the list of goalies with 300 wins. He's in it's like the top 40 goalies of all time. When you think of all the players who have played goalie in the NHL, he's in very good company. Good for him. 40 years old, got 300 wins. Good for him.
No doubt, and he'll always be a fan favorite with Ottawa Senators fans for certain. I mean, through basically I think he arrived in 2011 straight up for Brian Elliott and established himself as, I think you have to regard him as the greatest goalie in Ottawa Senators history. Mm-hmm. I am really surprised, though, because when he finally left Ottawa, when they finally decided to part company, I really thought that his career was going to end, and kudos to him, north of 40, to keep this thing going.
Yep. So his name comes up sometimes in trade rumors that if people are looking for, say, some depth at goal for say a playoff run, he might be one name. But that brings us to the trade deadline is looming. Steve, what does that mean for the Ottawa Senators?
Well, they have a number of guys who are going to be unrestricted free agents at the end of the year, so that's the annual conversation for every team. The Sens are always, seemingly throughout this 5-year rebuild, always looking at their UFAs and probably parting company with most of them. And I think if you know if you know you won't or can't resign your UFAs this summer, then you trade them at the deadline. And better to get something than nothing. And we've seen that with Mark Stone and J.G. Pajot and Matt Duchene. So I think right now the Sens are listening to offers for all of their UFAs. They probably won't get, unlike like a Mark Stone, well, although some would argue they didn't get a whole lot from Mark Stone, but you know what I mean. But there probably won't be much coming back as compensation. I think Nick Paul, Anton Forsberg, Zach Sanford might get you a second rounder.
Right.
So that's where I think they're at right now. If the money's right, Rob, I'd probably be inclined to re-sign Forsberg and Paul, assuming they want to stay and assuming the money is right.
Yeah, I like both of those players. I really do. Okay, the lockout's over. I don't have a lot to say. It's millionaires and billionaires, and there's so much going on in the world. I'm glad it's over. And a lot of people are excited about the Blue Jays. Do you think the Blue Jays are going to be any good?
Oh, I think so. Yeah,
oh, yeah?
I mean,
Okay.
They went right down to the final day, if you'll recall. They even had a lead in their Sunday afternoon game on the final day of the season, and they got the sweep they wanted against the Baltimore Orioles in that 3-game set, but the Red Sox were down in their game and they rallied late, so they were that close to finding their way into the playoffs. And I think there's every reason for Blue Jays fans to be optimistic because it was a youth-led movement, and all of these young guys are going to be 1 year more experienced. They'll have learned from being so close.
Right.
I've always said that one of the strengths of a team is that they've had that sting of being so close, and I think that'll serve the Jays well this year.
Good. Okay, all right. They're reporting to Dunedin now, I saw on Twitter. So there you go. Baseball spring training getting underway. All right, the Players' Championship golf is back. It's not a major, but it may as well be because the prize money's so big. All the best are there. Who do you like? Players' Championship.
Well, we have the advantage of having seen the first round, and it's not exactly the biggest name leaderboard you'll ever see. You got Tommy Fleetwood, last I checked, was at the top of the leaderboard, so there's a name. But I think if you look at the next 10, there's not a lot of household names there. The name that grabs me maybe is Louis Oosthuizen, because that's a guy that anytime he's near the top of the leaderboard on a Friday, he almost never comes off of it. So it's going to be an interesting weekend, though, because the weather is not great. They might have a Monday finish to this thing. I was looking today. They've already got the squeegees out on the greens in some cases. So, yeah, it's a great event, though. Yeah. Certainly, as you mentioned, the richest event in the PGA, top 50 players, and always acknowledged as the fifth major.
Yeah. All right, Dave, we're going to bring my producer David in.
Yes.
Who do you like, Dave?
Will Zalatoris.
Zalatoris, okay. All right.
Up-and-comer. I like
He's
his
at
chances.
3 under. Oosthuizen is at 3 under, and I'm going with somebody else who's at 3 under. I'm going with Rahm.
Oh, good one.
All right, okay. So, Steve, this, the course is beautiful. It's one of those Pete Dye courses, right? TPC Sawgrass. Most expensive green fee in the United States right now.
I didn't know that.
$840 U.S.
Wow.
With that, you get practice balls, cart fee, and what's known as a 4 caddy, which is a caddy who kind of caddies for the whole group but doesn't carry anybody's clubs. Will just give you kind of course advice, where to shoot, what club to use, that kind of thing. A 4 caddy. Gratuity not included, it says. Gratuity not included. It is the most expensive public tee time in the United States.
I would love to try that course. I mean, I'd probably shoot 150 on it, but I would love to try it just for that 17th hole. It's one of the most special holes in golf. It's one of those holes that basically rips away titles. If your listeners can picture taking a green tennis racket and putting it in their swimming pool and having it float there, that's what the 17th hole looks like.
Yeah.
It is. It's one of the best tests in golf, and it comes at it's on Sunday afternoon. It's the most amazing thing. It just shows a golfer's fortitude, basically.
So I'm willing to confess the most I ever played for a round of golf. The most I ever paid for a green fee was $120 for a green fee. That was at Highland Links in Cape Breton, which is an iconic course, okay? And that was many years ago. I don't know what the green fee is now. David, are you going to fess up most you ever paid for a green fee?
It was TPC Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
It was more than 150 U.S., less than 200. We'll put it that way.
Okay, between 150 and 200 U.S.
Yeah,
wow.
It was more than 200 bucks Canadian.
All right. Steve's a celebrity. He doesn't pay to golf. People pay him.
Guilty as charged.
Hey, we'll talk to you next week, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, boys.
All right. Bye-bye. Steve Warne, Sens Nation Podcast, sensnationhockey.com. Rob Snow Show, Queen's Park Week in Review comes up after the news on City News.
For local news in Ottawa and the Valley, this is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 11th. Good morning. I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa, it's -3, mostly cloudy skies, and in Smiths Falls, it's -1. Here's what's making news this hour. Russia is widening its military offensive in Ukraine, striking airports in the west and an industrial city in the east for the first time. The U.S. and its allies prepare to revoke Russia's favored trading status as a new punishment for the invasion. It is the 2-year anniversary of the first officially recorded case of COVID-19 in Ottawa. This comes as the province is reporting another decline in COVID hospitalizations, down by 25 from yesterday to 717. With the price of pretty much everything going up, taxis in the city are looking to increase their rates as well. The drivers' union, along with the president and CEO of Coventry Connections, the city's largest cab company, is asking for a 10% increase on cab rates. Ottawa taxis have set prices set by the city, but Uber and Lyft do not and are able to raise their prices based off demand whenever they choose. And in sports, the Ottawa Senators squeezed out another win last night, this time against the Seattle Kraken. Up 3-0 heading into the third, the Senators almost gave this one away, letting the Kraken tie it up and send it to overtime. But Josh Norris pulled off an overtime winner for his second of the night, as the Sens were able to get by with a 4-3 win. City News Time, 11:34. I'm Danielle Bain for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Time for Queen's Park Weekend Review. Everyone has assembled. Gilles Bisson, the Democrat MPP. The riding is Timmins. On the road today. Gilles.
On the road. Good morning.
Hey, where are you, Gilles?
North of around Latchford, I guess.
Okay, I have no idea where that is, but I'll take your word for it.
Between Latchford and Cobalt.
Oh, Cobalt. Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay, John Fraser, Liberal MPP, Ottawa South. John? Morning, John.
Morning, Rob.
Where are you, John?
I'm just down the street.
Just down the street. Okay, just around the corner here, Ottawa South. Okay. Donna, Skelly, PC MPP, Flamborough-Glanbrook. Donna, welcome back.
Nice to be here.
Where are you today?
Hammer.
In the Hammer.
Okay. Waiting for the big game tomorrow. The Outdoor Classic.
Oh, the Outdoor Classic. Okay. How's your weather looking for?
It's snowing, so it's
okay.
Good.
All right, yeah. Good. Just a little on the kind of cool enough, but not too cold, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good. Good outdoor hockey weather. That sounds great. All right, I want to start with, I'm going to start with the opposition, and then you can respond. But it was announced this week by both the Premier and the Chief Medical Officer of Health. The mask mandate is ending on the 21st of March. What's your reaction, John?
Well, look, I mean, what did surprise me is that the government lifted the mask mandate in schools. You know, the Children's Health Coalition, which includes GEO here in Ottawa, and the people who think about our children's health every day, asked the government to wait a couple of weeks. Paul Rubio-Leotis, who's the Chief Medical Officer of Health just east of here, thought we should wait a couple of weeks. Even your guest you had on yesterday from the Ottawa Hospital said, we could have waited another couple of weeks. So, given that especially in our elementary schools and middle schools, our vaccination rates for kids 5 to 11, we're at the back of the pack in Canada. We're around 55% of one dose, less than 30% for two. I don't understand why the government didn't wait 2 weeks in schools. They wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I would say if you could do it on the 21st, you could probably do it now, but that's my own opinion. Gilles, what do you think, Gilles? 21st is the date.
Well, I think it's risky. Listen, I understand, everybody wants out of these COVID restrictions. I don't think there's anybody out there that is not getting tired of being through this whole thing for the last 2 years. But as they say, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. the government may get away with this in the sense that things may not get too bad, and if that's the case, then they'll be proven right. But there's a real risk here by having kids congregate in classrooms and then they go back home and intermix with their families and friends. If it starts to spread, and it's more likely to spread if you don't have proper mask mandates in schools. So I think it's a risky thing. And if you listen to the Sick Kids Hospital, you listen to experts who know what they talk of, and they're saying you should have waited a little bit longer, and who knows, maybe until June.
Till June. Okay. All right.
Who knows, right?
Okay. Donna, that's the view from the opposition right now. Still, it is March 21st. Why?
Because the key public health indicators are trending in the right direction, and we cannot continue to remain in lockdown. We have exceptionally high vaccination rates. We have taken a very cautious approach to reopening the economy. Both of the members who are on the panel today, both the Liberals and the NDP, would probably keep our schools closed and our public venues.
No, we would. No,
right,
we would.
One at a time. Let Donna speak, please. Let Donna speak.
Well, it should be
okay, hold on. Donna didn't interrupt you. We'll let Donna finish.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Both didn't want us to reopen our schools when we did, and today we have almost 5,000 schools in the province of Ontario, and they're all open. We've taken an extremely cautious approach. We're not the first province to do this. In fact, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Yukon, Nunavut, and now I've learned have all opened, and BC will be not open, but remove their masks, and BC will be joining us on the 21st as well, eliminating the mandatory mask regulation. But the truth is, you can still wear your mask if you feel unsafe. You can wear it anywhere.
BC is as of today, as I understand it, right?
As of today?
Yeah, as of today. Yeah. Surprisingly, it was not expected.
It's an NDP government.
And that's an NDP government. But she was saying, Dr. Bonnie Henry was saying mid-March. We're almost at mid-March. Look, I've said Ontario is not any kind of outlier here. Okay, Alberta and Saskatchewan. Okay, you can say they're outliers. They ended their mask mandates. In Manitoba, it's next week. Same with New Brunswick. It's next week. Nova Scotia on the 21st, the same as Ontario. It's early April for Prince Edward Island. I don't think this government has gone rogue or anything here with masks.
Well, that's not the argument. That's not the argument that I'm making.
Okay.
What I'm saying is I understand why we're taking away mask mandates. I said plainly, people want out of this. I get it. But my point was, people in the medical field, yes, the Chief Medical Officer of Health says yes, but other medical experts are saying you should wait a little bit longer, at least a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
If who knows? We may get lucky. Maybe nothing will happen. And if that's the case, well, then the government's proven right. But if not, I think it's a big gamble to take.
Big gamble. Okay, John. Go ahead, John.
Rob. I don't know what, after our children's, people think about our children's health, they're asking us to wait 2 weeks. I don't know what's unreasonable about that. But, first of all, kids won't have to wear a mask in the school bus, but if they get on OC transport, they will, because that's what the government kept it on. So, I just think it was a reasonable thing to do. It was a cautious, sure-footed thing to do. But here's the question that I have, and this is something that doesn't get discussed a lot. I heard repeatedly over the last 2 days, we got to remember to be kind to people who wear masks. Well, what? It's been repeated again, and how do we get to this point? And people wear masks to protect each other. They're actually doing the kind thing. And the Chief Medical Officer of Health and politicians say, remember to be kind to people who wear masks. How do we get there?
Well, let's play the clip of the Premier. This is the Premier from his news conference midweek. Go ahead.
You look around the world, no matter if it's CDC down in the U.S. and the rest of the world, we've been super cautious. As a matter of fact, I've been probably accused of being the most cautious leader in North America when it comes to this pandemic, but I want to be cautious. And we're going to take those recommendations and move forward with the advice of Dr. Moore.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
The problem is that we've always been late. We've always been reacting to COVID. So the lockdowns have been longer and harder.
Yeah.
I remember this time last year, we were closing splash pads and we were going to start carding again.
It would have been really nice if we'd had the vaccine led by the federal Liberals when we wanted them. And most of the countries around the world were given the vaccines much earlier than we were ever able to access them. Of course, our leader at the time was negotiating with China for that vaccine, but that's probably one of the reasons why we were unable to get vaccines in the army as quickly as possible. It is true. It is true. You want to go back and talk about what really happened, but we have been proactive. Let's just talk about what we've done, the proactive
Go ahead, Donna.
things that we've done to make our schools safer. 73,000 HEPA units have been deployed to schools. We've got 40,000 more on their way to classrooms. The teachers wanted N95 masks. They have them. I'm not sure if they're wearing them, but they have them in their schools. We have masks in their schools. We have vaccination clinics in schools. We've been very proactive. And the proof is in the pudding. Our schools are open today. Kids have been suffering, and both of you have said their mental health has been affected when they couldn't return to school and see their peers in class. We wanted to have classrooms open. Both of you objected to it, but we did it, and they're feeling better about it. Now we're saying if they choose to, they don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to remove their mask on the 21st, they can.
Should there be a certain level of autonomy, though, at the school board level? If a school board, like in your area, as I understand it, Donna, one of the Hamilton school boards doesn't want to end the mask mandate and plans to extend it.
They voted against it.
Okay.
No, I would rather take medical advice from the chief medical officer of health over a public school board trustee. If students want to wear their masks, they can wear their masks. But I don't think it's up to a school board trustee to make that determination. We've always relied on the advice of medical experts.
But the problem with that, Donna, is there are medical officers of health in different regions of the province who are saying we should not remove the mask from the classroom. It's
and
happened
they can
in
use
the
Section 22.
Well, that's what we were about to talk about. But when you say the chief medical officer of health decided, it's not unanimous amongst all the medical officers of health across Ontario, because just outside of Parry Sound, the school board that goes from Parry Sound east, North Bay east, the chief medical officer of health there has said, no, I think you should continue wearing masks in the classroom. So there's no unanimity.
True. You could have 20 doctors in a room and have 20 doctors.
Yeah, listen,
at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. And you can have the decision by
127 MPPs in a room, and maybe they won't agree.
Exactly.
But my point,
has to make a decision.
Hang on. My point is, there are chief medical officers of health who say no, and yes, if the chief medical officer of health and the school board decides to do it differently, then I think they should have the ability to do that. But it should be a provincial mandate.
Quick comment at the board level. What should be allowed at the board level, John?
Just quickly, well, the government took away the power of public. A school board should always do it in concert with a local officer of health. But the government took away the power for the local medical officer of health to issue letters of instruction. Can no longer do that. They can do it Section 222, but that's very big and long and complicated. All the power is centralized now in the chief medical officer of health. And I'm just going to go back to the people who think about our children's health every day asked us to wait 2 weeks. And for some reason, the government think that's unreasonable. And I don't think it is. And so that's why you're seeing school boards coming out and doing this. If the government had just been reasonable and done what people had asked them and recommended them to do, then this wouldn't be happening.
Rob, may I just respond quickly?
Sure, Donna. Yep.
If we had said wait 2 more weeks and we agreed to, I guarantee, and you'd say, well, let's just wait until the end of the school year.
No, I wouldn't.
It would never end. You don't want to ever agree with the measures we've taken.
Okay.
It's never enough. It's too soon.
But that's not true, Donna.
It is true.
Donna, that's not
All right. We're going to stop. We'll stop. We can't keep going on about this. When we come back, 2 years, okay, since the pandemic started, I'd like to get some personal reflections on you on this 2-year mark. I also would like to talk about gas prices. When we return, this is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
it's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people, have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and see the process, and of course ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do, is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. The other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but not, of the 30-odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. It's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that actually balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through here and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. You just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. It's running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases, we'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Back with PC MPP, Donna Skelly, John Fraser, Liberal MPP, and Gilles Bisson, New Democrat MPP. So 2 years since the pandemic. What are you guys thinking about today on the 2-year anniversary in your role as MPPs? Donna, why don't you go first on this one, Donna?
Well, it's been really difficult to hear the gut-wrenching stories of people who've been struggling to keep their business doors open. The stories of parents talking about how the isolation that their children have undergone through the past 2 years, how it's impacted their mental health. And those are really difficult, but also being isolated from our peers. It's important when, I don't care what party you belong to, whether you're a Liberal, an NDP, or a Conservative, you're often under attack, and it's really important to have that support in place and to be around people who are like-minded and can give you the support that you need. But that's been really, really difficult. On the other hand, the one good thing that I think that has come out of COVID is the ability to transition to a more virtual world. And while virtual meetings can be, they became annoying after a while, they are very helpful in many situations. And I think people are recognizing that regardless of where you are now, you can still attend a meeting and have your say. Yeah,
it's exposed on that side, though. The digital divide, right? You have an economic digital divide. There are households that can't afford, the latest, greatest internet connection and computer equipment. But also, and I know this is a priority for the government, the provincial government and the federal government, the regional digital divide. I mean, you go an hour and a half outside of Ottawa, you know, your internet experience is totally different than somebody in the city. Slow connection, unreliable connection, and you can't fully participate in this great virtual world. So that's a big challenge for a huge province like Ontario. So
we've put $5 billion in.
Yeah. No, I know it's a priority. It's
still not enough.
No. Gilles, go ahead, Gilles. On the 2 years of the pandemic,
only about 2% of that money got spent, but that's a whole other debate we had yesterday in the House. I guess a couple of things. First, it has really changed the way that we work. There's no question about that. And in regards to the digital divide, I have one of my staffers who doesn't have internet where she lives, and she's had to, come into the office and work alone in order to be able to get access to the internet, to be able to do the work that she had to do. So that's made it difficult. Now, finally, Starlink is working. She applied, took her about 6 months, and she just, as of Thursday, got internet where she lives. So it's made it difficult for some. I think the other thing is that what we found is at the beginning, the general public was, reluctant but understanding. And, people were working together a lot more. I'm talking about in the community to try to weather the storm. I think as we get longer into this, people are losing their patience. And so I think we're all seeing, every MPP, I don't care what the stripe is, we're all seeing, our phone calls to constituents and, messengers and with Facebook, et cetera, where people are much, much more frustrated. And as Donna was saying, sometimes, it's a little bit hard to take. Like, I don't find people are ignorant. Like, I haven't had people yell at me or anything like that, but people are generally frustrated. And I'll tell you, social media has been it's both a blessing and a curse at the same time.
I think it's more of a curse.
In the sense that the curse is that people read stuff according to the algorithms that they've got, and they think it's it
validates their own opinions. Yeah,
exactly, and that makes it really difficult when you're trying to have a conversation with someone.
It does. Yeah. John, I was just thinking, 2 years. You were one of the last guests I actually had in the studio, John.
I know.
Before we went, and I never got a chance to see in person. That beautiful COVID head of hair of yours. So.
We did.
I was going to reach for that.
It was something else.
Holy cow.
Well, hopefully
man.
The lock entered the room before the man.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting picked on here. Look, I think the hardest thing I think for all of us, and is that our job it's a people job. We're with people.
Yeah.
That's we represent people. I love being with people, and that's I can only think of maybe a couple dozen events that I've gone to over 2 years that are sort of public events, whereas most of us probably, we do that in a month, or 6 weeks we do that many, and I think that's the biggest change. We're all tired of Zoom. I just don't think I can look at screens anymore. It's kind of an exhausting experience, but it is hard to hear the stories of people and trying to help people who are struggling because of the pandemic and other things. That's really exposed a lot of things in all of our communities, and so that's kind of the hardest part. And
some things, John, some things can never go back to the way they were.
100%.
100%. Long-term care.
Yeah.
We've had an investigation. It can never be what it was before. It's not going to be acceptable. You can't go through that again.
Home care too.
So,
we haven't talked about
that's a whole other debate. We can do a whole show on that.
Yeah, we could do a whole show. All right, very quickly, record prices for gas. Jason Kenney, Premier of Alberta, suspended the PST on fuel sales. Very quickly, minute or less, yes or no, Gilles Bisson, to suspending PST on fuel sales?
You can't do that without regulating the price, because the minute you drop the price by 10 cents or 12 cents, whatever it might be, the gas companies are going to come up.
They're going to go in and eat that margin, you're saying. Okay, John,
exactly.
What do you think, John?
Exactly.
Exactly, so that's a no from both of you.
They'll fill the hole. The thing I am tired of, though, is governments asking other governments to take the tax off while they're still taxing.
Donna?
Boy, I wonder why he said that. Let's be honest here.
You get the last word, Donna. Make it quick. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
So want to reduce the gas tax. We have already reduced it by 4.3 cents. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Look, thank you for all the work that you're doing on behalf of your constituents, all the work that you've done over the last 2 years. I know it's been a difficult time for everyone, and that includes our MPPs. Thank you for your community service and your public service. We'll speak soon.
That's so sweet.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye now.
Gilles Bisson, Donna Skelly, and John Fraser. I'm Rob Snow, back on Monday. Have a great weekend. This is The Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Tune in weekdays starting at 9 on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.